The Aeon Patricas, meaning, Valentinian understanding, and role in the consciousness of a believer. Greek meaning. The Greek word Πατρικῆς, Patricas, is derived from patήρ, pater, meaning father. It signifies a paternal or fatherly aspect, an emanation of divine knowledge and authority. In the context of Valentinian Gnosticism, Patricas is an aeon emanating from the sun, which reflects the divine paternal attribute of Christ. It encapsulates the unity of the divine with creation and is associated with the role of Christ as the Father in the spiritual sense, guiding believers toward the knowledge of divine truth. Valentinian understanding of the Aeon Patricas. In Valentinian thought, aeons are aspects or attributes of the divine that emanate from the Father and the Son. Patricas is one of the 26 aeons that emanate from the Son, representing a divine principle of fatherhood, wisdom, and authority that manifests through Christ. According to the Gospel of Philip, Christ has everything in himself, whether man or angel or mystery, and the Father. This statement reflects the belief that Patricas, as an emanation from the Son, is an integral part of the divine attributes that Christ embodies. Since Christ encompasses all of these elements, including the Father, it aligns with the notion that God was in Christ, reconciling the world to himself. 2 Corinthians 5, verse 19. As stated in 2 Corinthians 5:19, God was in Christ, reconciling the world to himself. This verse affirms that Christ, as the Son, manifested the Father in his being and work, serving as the conduit for reconciliation and divine knowledge. The Aeon Patricas symbolizes this paternal role of Christ, as it is through him that the divine is communicated to creation. Patricas in relation to Christ's role as the Father of the future age. In the book of Isaiah, the title of Father of the Future Age, Isaiah 9 verse 67, refers to the paternal attribute that is embodied by Christ. The verse states, "For unto us a child is born, and unto us a son is given, and leadership is placed upon his shoulder. And his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty Warrior, Father of the Future Age." Hebrew, Olam, Septuagint, Aeon, Prince of Peace. This emphasizes that Christ is the Father of the future age, or Aeon, resonating with the essence of Patricas, the Aeon that emanates from the Son, and reflects divine authority and wisdom in the age to come. The Gospel of Philip and the paternal role of Christ. In the Gospel of Philip, there is a distinction between slave and son, and the nature of the inheritance they receive. The slave seeks only to be free, but he does not hope to acquire the estate of his master. But the son is not only a son, but lays claim to the inheritance of the father. Those who are heirs to the dead are themselves dead, and they inherit the dead. Those who are heirs to what is living are alive, and they are heirs to both what is living and the dead. The dead are heirs to nothing. For how can he who is dead inherit? This passage underscores the idea that the Son inherits not just material possessions, but spiritual knowledge and divine authority. The Aeon Patricas signifies this inheritance of life and knowledge, a spiritual transformation from the slavery of sin into the freedom of divine wisdom. In another passage, the Gospel of Philip highlights the believer's journey from being orphans to having both father and mother through Christ. When we were Hebrews, we were orphans and had only our mother, but when we became Christians, we had both father and mother. This refers to the transition from a state of spiritual orphanhood, represented by the incomplete or lesser wisdom, to the completeness of having both truth, the mother, and knowledge, the father, in Christ. The Aeon Patricas reflects the father aspect of this transformation, bringing the believer into the full knowledge and inheritance of the divine wisdom. In this context, truth is the mother, and knowledge is the father, a symbiotic relationship that leads to spiritual freedom and enlightenment. Patricas and the role in the consciousness of a believer. The Christ consciousness, the mind of Christ. The Aeon Patricas plays a pivotal role in the consciousness of the believer. It is through the paternal attribute of Christ that the believer receives both spiritual inheritance and divine wisdom. The process of attaining spiritual maturity and divine knowledge is closely tied to the consciousness of Christ, specifically the mind of Christ, or Christ consciousness. This consciousness involves an alignment with the paternal wisdom, embodied by Patricas, as the believer moves from spiritual orphanhood to spiritual sonship. In the Gospel of Philip, it is stated, "He who has knowledge of the truth is a free man, but the free man does not sin, for he who sins is the slave of sin." John 8:34. Truth is the mother, knowledge the father. This passage emphasizes that the mother and knowledge, the father, are the keys to spiritual freedom. The Aeon Patricas, as an emanation from the Son, represents the knowledge of the divine, wisdom that leads the believer to overcome sin and align with the divine will. The Christ consciousness is the awareness of the transformation that occurs when a believer embraces both the Father and the Mother aspects of Christ. It is through this consciousness that the believer achieves unity with the divine, receiving both the wisdom of the Father and the love of the Mother. The Aeon Patricas, as part of the divine attributes emanating from the Son, encapsulates this transformation, allowing the believer to inherit the wisdom of the Father and participate in the divine plan. Conclusion. The Aeon Patricas represents the paternal attribute within Christ, symbolizing the divine authority and wisdom that emanate from the Son. Through this aeon, believers come to understand Christ not only as the Son, but also as the Father of the future age. The Father in the spiritual sense, who provides the inheritance of divine wisdom and knowledge. The Aeon Patricas reveals the path to spiritual freedom and unity with the divine, embodying the transformation from spiritual orphanhood to the fullness of divine sonship. This transformation is central to the consciousness of the believer, who is called to live in the Christ consciousness, the mind of Christ. Through this consciousness, the believer inherits both the wisdom of the Father and the love of the Mother, leading to spiritual enlightenment and the fulfillment of divine purpose.